Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on World Awakening tonight. I have a very special guest, a lovely woman named Melissa St. Hilaire. And I was on the phone with her earlier today, and I said, well, I hope you're funny so that at some point during the show tonight, I can say Melissa St. Hilarious. And she laughed. So that was good. That was a really great start for us. Uh, She came into my world recently, just within the last week or two. And our mutual friend, Erin, introduced us. And I just knew that this was the perfect place for her to land in cyberspace for an hour and share her purpose and her gifts with all of you. So without further ado, please welcome my new friend, Melissa. How are you, darling?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Andrea. I'm so happy to be here.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. And I told you earlier today, this is your show. Whatever you want to talk about is what we'll talk about. So before we even start, just tell everyone who's watching who you are, where you're from. Like it doesn't even have to be like what planet. You can just keep it on, planet Earth for right now. It's fine.
I was going to say the Orion Belt, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Sirius, planet Sirius. I am very serious. So, it should, in spite of my really good sense of humor. But I want you to share what you do with everyone that's watching tonight so that they can be as enlightened and inspired as I was during our initial conversation.
Yeah, of course. Well, let's see. Where do I even begin? I am originally from Massachusetts. I grew up in a really tiny rural town called
Rhode Island.
Yes, Rhode Island. I was like, so you know where Woonsocket, Rhode Island is? I
Yes.
was in a little town just a little bit up from Woonsocket. And so I grew up in Upton and for a little while and then moved to Mendon, Mass. And so I had a cornfield, out my bedroom window, and we had apple trees and rhubarb and strawberries and blueberries and all kinds of stuff. It was awesome. But,
crop circles, any crop circles?
No crop circles, but definitely a lot of shadow people. I had this weird thing when I was little. I developed insomnia really early at an early age when kids should just be sleeping.
Yeah.
And I would always see this figure right outside my window. And it was the window that was where the cornfield was. And I could hear him like pacing around the house at night. It was the strangest thing. And he had a top hat and he was all in shadow. And I had a variety of like different ideas of what he was. Like, was he evil? Was he good? He kind of just felt neutral at the end of the day, like neither good nor bad, but just
there,
just watching. It was very strange. And so I lived in Massachusetts for a while, went to Boston College. And then I met my future husband in New York City on a film set of all places. And we decided to just move to LA to see what we could do. So now I'm in Los Angeles. And sadly, he's in Chicago right now, but he's on the Shy. And so, but I'm here taking care of the cats. And so when I was little, I noticed really early on that I was not like normal.
Me too.
I would feel things. I would see things that nobody else could feel or see, except for my grandmother. I have to say, my grandmother was the one who really guided me early on until she had an aneurysm, and then I didn't have that guiding light anymore. But she would say things like, if you look really closely, you can see the fairies that live in the moss and dance under the mushrooms in the yard. And she would say like, and be careful because they like to steal things, if don't leave me anything shiny out. But they do. And then
shiny objects. Yep.
All shiny objects. And she would take me for these long walks because we had the woods behind our house. And sometimes those woods are really kind of creepy. But she would take me for these long walks in the woods. And there was this one particular spot where every once in a while there would be a pond, but not all the time. It was really odd. And there was this giant boulder. And she would tell me, like, go lie on the boulder and put your ear up to it and listen to the spirits of the land who used to live here before. Like, who does this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And God bless that you had her, because otherwise you would have probably been questioning your own sanity at an early age. So
Oh,
thank God
absolutely.
that you had her. And even post aneurysm, you still had her, and
That's
you
so
still
true.
do today.
That is so true. In fact, a very odd thing happened when she died. She had the aneurysm and then she lived for a long time, but she like wasn't herself. You know, it was like the body was there, but the mind had traveled someplace else.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she finally did pass, I had this weird experience where mom and I were driving aimlessly in Massachusetts, just, having a day. And my mom all of a sudden was like, I think we're really close to Grammy's nursing home. Would you like to go see her? And I was like, of course, let's go. And we get to this crossroads and she's like, I think it's to the left. And I just heard as clear as day in my head, turn right, Melissa. And so I told my mom. My mom was like, "Well, I don't know. All right, let's go. Let's see what happens." We turned right, and boom, there it was, right around the bend. And we got there, and her brother was there. And her brother was like, "Oh, they called you. I'm so glad you're here." And my mom's like, "Nobody called us. We just showed up." And he was like, "No, no, somebody called you." And we looked at each other like, this was before cell phones. Like nobody called
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And so we're like, what's going on? This is very strange. So we finally get a nurse to talk to, and she explains to us, your grandmother has begun transitioning. So we had called all the family in to be here. But we never got a phone call. It was just spirit guided us
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And, I as soon as I saw her, I'm trying not to get emotional, but as soon as I saw her, I knew instantly what my job was.
Yeah.
I had to tell her it was okay to go. And as soon as I did, she left. And that was my mom said she couldn't do it. Because I turned to my mom and I was like, I think I have to, tell her to go. And my mom was like, you have to do it. I can't do it. It has to be you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of an early indication of my purpose.
Yes.
I didn't figure it out for real for a long time, but that was a huge clue, you know? And then, fast forward several years, I went all through college and had all kinds of problems because I started to sort of turn away from my spiritual side. I was very caught up in, oh, I got to get good grades. I got to go get a job. I got to go be like a normal person in the world.
Person. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Doesn't it suck?
Huge failure at that.
Yeah, me too. Oh
Like,
no, I was in Melissa, I was in fake it till you make it mode for decades of my
yes.
life.
Yeah. I could not hold down a job. I was just in, and it wasn't that I wasn't smart or couldn't do the thing. My heart was never in any of the stuff that I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
I did data entry for a while. Oh, that was so boring. Um, but it's also hard work, but like I think my favorite job was working at a video rental store
Mhm.
because I could be like my weirdo self and everybody thought it
Yeah,
was
and
great.
I was like, yep.
They're like, she's a weirdo, but it's okay.
Yeah.
She can go be in charge of the cult section.
Mhm.
And but anyway, I graduated, met my husband, moved to LA, and I tried really hard to break into the filmmaking industry. I did a mentorship with a gentleman and he showed me the ropes. Through him, I wrote lyrics, I wrote songs, I wrote screenplays. Nothing really went anywhere, but at least I had some practice finally doing what I had studied in school and come out here to do. But again, it was like I wasn't feeling it. My heart really wasn't in it. And then I got a job doing graphic design for like opening sequences for game shows and other TV shows and commercials, things like that. And I thought, okay, now I'm in. Now I'm in the big break. But every day was a struggle. Every day I had a panic attack. Every day I could, like, the producers, they kept the creatives separate from the producers.
Mhm.
And the producers were very, I don't know, they treated us like we were a pack of wild animals.
Mhm.
And I realized very quickly, I'm just too sensitive for this. I could feel everybody's energy. I could feel when people didn't like me. I could,
Anxiety. Yep.
yeah. So through the roof, So I ended up being put on medication for a long time. That was a disaster. Just, you
Yeah,
know,
because you didn't need it.
no, at all. But nobody, I didn't have anybody at that time to say, Melissa, you're fine. You're just a little woo woo. Like, you're
Mhm.
not crazy. You just need a little guidance in life. And during the height of all of that, I had a complete split from reality. I had a full blown conversation with my grandmother, who this was the first time that I really talked to her while she was on the other side. And
Mhm.
I thought it was part of me losing my mind, honestly. Like, I thought,
Mhm.
okay, that's it. I'm going to be locked away for all eternity. This is how it goes. And went through a facility, I got help, what have you. And by the end of it, they were like, you're not crazy.
No, there's nothing wrong with you. You're gifted.
Yep, that's what they said. They said you're gifted, and you need to be in the right environment, and
Right.
you're not there right now.
Mhm.
And they said, and also I had to take care of myself, because I would go for like hours without eating, drink too much coffee, and they're like, no, you're
Cheers. Yeah,
right. But they're like, honey,
like my
no, like.
6th cup today. Yep.
So I had to sort of shift everything around. I had to take care of myself. And that's when I started doing yoga, started meditating. And then we moved to the valley, which was much more chill than downtown LA.
Yeah.
And I discovered this store that's right around the corner from me called the Green Man Store. And I went in there and I was like, it was one of those moments where you just like, I was like, wow, I can breathe in here, and I feel accepted, and I feel normal for the first time in my life. And I started taking a bunch of classes. I went to rituals. I, Griffin, who works there, I sat down with him one day because I was like, I need a reading or something. I need to know what to do with myself. And he looked at me and he said, Melissa, you have the gift of sight. And that's what you need to do with yourself. You can use that to serve community. You can use that to help others.
Mhm.
And a light bulb went off. And I was like, oh my God, yes, that's all I've ever wanted to do. I've just wanted to help people. And
Well, everything that you went through is, part of that path to get to that epiphany, that moment of self-awareness and personal enlightenment, so that you come most people who are bona fide mediums don't even discover it until they're in their 40s.
wow.
Most. So one of my dear friends, Chip Coffey, was all grown up when it hit him like a brick. And then once he opened that door, he was like, how do you close it? How do you, he had to learn how to block. I mean, everybody was just coming through. It was like an explosion of spirit in his life. And I've met several other people around the world that had that same awareness. I floated around. I didn't even pick up a pen and start to write um, the story of the house and my childhood home and all of that until I was 48.
Wow.
48. And I said, oh God damn, I got to do something like with my life before I hit 50.
Yep.
I was kind of pop whipping myself on my own timeline, um, because I felt like in some way I had wasted so much time floating from this business to that business. And it felt like, even though years and years, and I had one business for 7 years, I had one business for 10 years. I worked in, I got psychological training to work as a therapeutic counselor, with
Nice.
children, which I did for a decade. I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this. And it wasn't until I found that place that you found where you're comfortable in your own skin,
Yes.
that awareness that finally, but all of that had to happen. And all of it prepared me for what came.
Yes.
So don't feel, well, it's not my place to tell you what to feel or not to feel. I would suggest that in those moments where you feel like you've wasted time, remind yourself of this conversation, that you never wasted a thing, that you were learning, you were finding your path. And there were a few detours along the way, but down every detour, there was some lesson that you needed to learn. And you know, the show that I do just before I do a World Awakening is called Soul School Sojourn. And it's based on the premise that we in Earth here now are in soul school. And we're just learning how to love, and we're learning how to emote and how to interact, and coming to our realization of oneness together and on our spiritual ascension path. And what sucks totally about soul school is that the test always, always without fail precedes the lesson. It's
Yes.
not the opposite like it is in, you know, conventional school, where you get to learn something and then you get tested on your knowledge of it. It's the reverse. You've got to go through the tests, and sometimes it's a trial by fire. But oh, sweetheart, do I understand completely. I mean, you just feel like a freaking ghost, like you're floating around in the ether. Like, what am I
Totally.
doing here?
Yep.
Why am I here? Where did I come from? Where am I going? You know,
Yes.
these
Exactly.
are the critical questions in life.
Yes. I
And most people just put them in a little shoebox in the back of the closet of their consciousness and just go about their day-to-day 3D life and don't even think about those things because it's too hard. And so when someone like you plunges in feet first into the deep end, at first you might feel like you're drowning. But when you come up for air and you can breathe for the first time in your life, I totally get it.
Yeah, it's weird because, my whole life, it's like I kept feeling like I felt like I knew I had a purpose. Do you know what
Mhm,
I mean?
me
And
too.
and and
I
it's
had to identify it.
yeah, and I had this one experience that happened to me, and I don't tell this to a lot of people because it's kind of bizarre,
It's
but
just you and me. There's
yeah,
nobody else here. We're good.
I was young, I was in college. I would think I wanna say a sophomore-ish age, and I was with a group of people, and we went out to we were in Provincetown, Mass, so that's the tip of Cape Cod.
Oh, P-Town, one of my favorite places on earth. Oh my God. Oh, the Dolphin 6 whale watch out of P-Town. Nothing like it in the world. Nothing.
Nothing. I love there, and so we were at that, at the very tip, if you follow Commercial Street and you keep going and going, and there's this long, breakwater. It's all a bunch
Yes.
of rocks, right?
Yep.
So we walked out there, and they went off ahead because they were smoking a joint or whatever the heck they were doing. And I I wasn't there for that. I was there because it's beautiful and I wanted to take it in. And so they're off ahead doing whatever they're doing, and I just kinda and the water's rising, and there's this beautiful moment, and it's the middle of the night where the water is like if the rocks are here, the water is almost to the top of the rocks.
Mhm.
And so there's water on both sides of me, and then the Milky Way overhead, because there's no light pollution out there. You can see
None.
this night sky.
Yeah.
And I had always been obsessed with staring at the night sky because I've always seen UFOs. That's just a whole other side note. But
Yeah.
so I'm standing and I'm
Why
like,
I get up and live and breathe every day.
right?
That's my side note. Total connection.
So I'm lying there like, okay, show me, and I'm like, I want to see a UFO. That's what I'm looking for.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden I see this little pinprick of light
Mhm.
right in the center of my vision. and it's green of all colors. It's like a neon
I
green.
know them.
You
Yeah.
know, okay.
Oh, yeah. Many times. Yes.
And this light comes down, and it's like it's getting close. It's like getting bigger, and it's like growing closer to me.
Mhm.
And then the next thing I notice, it's like a hallway, but it's like I don't even know how to, it's like a green gridded hallway, and I'm in it, and I know that even though I'm still on the rock, I'm also not on the rock anymore, if
Yes.
that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yes. Completely.
And I can feel air underneath my back. So I'm floating at this point. Now, and I'm like, at the same time, I'm like thinking about my friends that had gone ahead. I'm like, I'm like, in my head, I'm like trying to call to them. I don't know why I didn't say it out loud. I just did it in my head. I was like, can you see me? I'm floating, but they're off ahead. And they're nowhere to be found. I can't hear them. I'm completely disconnected from them. And as I'm floating, all of a sudden, this giant eye appears in the middle of this green dot. And it's like coming down towards me. And I get this sensation of, if I go into the eye, I can go home. And I'm like, I have to say, I was really depressed at this time in my life because I felt so incredibly lost. You know, Boston College was a great school. I did really well there, but it's also very conservative. And I was a little purple haired freak. Like, I didn't like really fit in with,
Yeah.
the yuppies. I mean, I had some great people, don't get me wrong, but I felt very odd. So I'm lying there, and all of a sudden I'm transported to this other place. I'm standing in this sort of round room, and I'm on, it almost looks like a pool, but it's also kind of holographic-y. It's weird.
Mhm.
And I'm in the middle of this weird pool, and there's like a table ahead of me and four figures, and they're silhouetted. I can't see their faces. I just get the sense of, I know that there's four, and I can see that, and I feel like there's two male and two female, but it's, who knows.
Yeah.
And they start talking to me, and they say, you know, we feel you, and we understand how hurt and broken you are right now, and what you're going through, and how hard this is. So if you want to, you can come home right now with us. But know that if you come home with us right now, you can never go back to this body, this life, this person that you are. And also know that you will have not fulfilled your life purpose.
So you're gonna have to do it all over again.
Exactly. And they said, but it's up to you. You have the power to choose. You can stay
Mm.
here and keep going, or you can come home. Totally up to you. And I had this weird feeling of like, if the eye touched me, it was going to scoop me up and bring me with them.
Mhm.
But I had the power to break free at the last minute. So the next thing I know, I take a deep breath. I'm back in my body. I'm just hovering above the rocks. I look at the eye. I breathe in. I sit bolt upright, and everything vanishes, and I plunk down on the rocks. And I'm like, oh, I guess I decided to stay.
Yeah.
And I still had a lot of trials and tribulations in my life, but at that moment, it was something shifted entirely within me.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
went back to campus. I went to the priests on campus, and I was like, this is what happened to me. Can you help me? Can you tell me what's going on? And they were like, you got to stop taking drugs. I was like, I was stone cold sober. Maybe I had a Dr. Pepper. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't drugs. I went to a Buddhist. I went to a shrink. I went to everybody that you can imagine to talk about what happened to me. And basically, they all kind of wrote me off. They all kind of just, were like, whatever, just your wild imagination, or you're partying too hard or whatever. But it stuck with me. And I carried that feeling for my whole life until I started to dive into the mediumship. And it all really unfolded. Oh, my light just went out. Of course, as soon as I say mediumship,
Yeah,
part of
I was just gonna say, yeah, like that was a coincidence, yeah, which doesn't exist, yeah,
no, it's a little dimmer now. I apologize, but
that's fine.
that's just a perfect timing. Of
I
course.
deal with it all the time. Ask my producer. Every week. You just never know what's going to happen next.
It's crazy. So I said, "Hello, spirits. I acknowledge you."
Hello, spirits. We
I always
acknowledge
try to
you.
do that, right? As soon as
Yeah.
they
Now,
make their
don't
presence
fuck with
known.
our equipment. Thank you very
Exactly.
much.
Let me talk for a few more
Yeah.
minutes, guys. But yeah, so I was sitting, a friend of mine, Rochelle Evans, she's a hairdresser and also a Reiki master and a psychic medium. And she's a little older than me, so she's a little more life experience. And so I look to her all the time. I think of her as a mentor. And so she was doing my hair, and I'm very picky about who gets to like touch me and do my hair. So of course, only a psychic can do my hair.
Right.
And we were talking, and all of a sudden, I saw this man standing behind her, and I described the man to her, and she knew exactly who it was. And she goes, "You're a medium," and I'm like, "Shut up." And she goes, "No." She's like, "You should train. You should pursue this because this could be your path. This could be how you help people." And I was like, "I don't know. I mean, my first thought was, everyone is going to think I'm batshit crazy."
Crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I realized, so what?
So what? That's three of my favorite words. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. You can think I am not responsible for how you perceive anything in this life. And that message, it just vibrates out of me. Like, people know it. I would not be able to speak my truth the way that I did if I was in any way emotionally invested in the response that I receive. If you
Right.
don't like this show, change the channel.
Exactly.
Honest to God, you got go watch the Weather Channel if you can relate to that better. Get
Right.
off of YouTube. Get off. Get out of KGRA. Go someplace else. If this doesn't resonate with you, and you know what? The thing is, the audience that we have, they totally get us. This is a community of eavesdropping weirdos.
I love that.
And if my friend John Tenney told me, well, I had it on my show and we talked about the etymology of the word weirdo. And it goes back to the Middle Ages, 1500s, I believe. But it was spelled WYRD. And what it really meant was people who manifested their own destiny, those that lived outside the walls of the castle, that grew their own produce and raised their own animals and were not in any way reliant on the hierarchy. Then they were the weird. They were known as the weird. So if somebody calls you a weirdo, they couldn't possibly pay you a higher compliment.
I love that. I love that so much. I'm going to carry that with me everywhere.
Good.
That's awesome. And so I began this journey. I started to train. I did some practice séances with my good friends Patty Negri and Sheena Metal.
Oh, I just love Patty. Oh my God, I love that woman.
Isn't she great? She's got such beautiful, bright, shining energy, right?
Yeah.
And I love her to pieces. And she really showed me what you can do, what's possible, And so I took that and I kept, and I developed it, and I kept learning, and I started doing readings and spellcrafting and all kinds of stuff out of the Green Man. I did it personally, privately first for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually someone was like, "You should start charging for this." And it was really hard for me to charge for it because
I understand.
Right. Because I felt like, I don't know. I can't even describe why. It just felt like it was antithetical to my point of being. I'm not driven by money,
Yeah.
And then someone said to me, and this was the way that it changed my mind, and it made me realize I could actually make a living doing this. They said, "You're not charging for your gifts.
Right.
You're charging for your time." And I was like, "Oh, yes. Okay. That makes sense to me. I can work with that." And then the pandemic hit and everything was shaken up, you know. And then something really weird happened where all of a sudden I felt like I could shine. Like there was some, I mean, I know it was a horrible time for a lot of people. We were all struggling and starving and, you know, unsure. But there was something in there where it was like in the midst of that chaos, I found myself. And I ended up doing this clubhouse thing with a guy named Darren Bousman where we talked about mediumship and all kinds of stuff. And I was very shy before this. You know, I would rarely like leave my house. I didn't really talk, you know, I just kind of a hermit, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had the opportunity, it's something about it seemed safe. And I probably because it's just audio and nobody could see me, so I could kind of hide.
Yeah.
It just had my voice. But I met some amazing people on that, like Susan Slaughter, and
Another
then
friend of mine. I adore her.
I do too. Another bright shining light, right? She's just so special. And she was doing this thing called the Dark Zone, and she's like, "Oh, we're gonna do this a paranormal investigation at
Yeah,
the
I'm on the dark zone too.
oh, okay." She was like, "We're gonna do a paranormal investigation at the LAPD museum," and I was like, and this is my ever since I was a little kid, all I have wanted to do is ghost hunts. I would watch those two guys. I'm blanking on their names right now because I'm a little nervous, but the two guys out of Rhode Island, the original ghost
Right.
hunters.
The original ghost hunters, also friends of mine.
Ah, I
There's
just
not too many people I don't know in the paranormal field. In fact, Jason Hawes, I'm very good friends with his daughter, Satori Hawes,
I've heard
and Grant
nothing but good
Wilson.
things.
Wonderful people. He and his wife
Oh,
are just lights in my life. It's been too long since I've talked with them, but yeah, they are the original. They were the first ones that investigated the farmhouse that I grew up in.
I didn't know that they were the
Yeah.
first ones.
Season 2, episode 7 of Ghost Hunters.
Oh my God, I have to watch it again.
Yeah, and you can see the house. It was 1, 2, 3 owners ago.
Wow. It's been a long time since I watched their show, but I loved it so much, and I was like, "I wanna do that," you know?
Mhm.
And so when Susan gave me that opportunity, you know, I was so excited, and at first I just thought I would just be like a random person in the background, you know what I mean? Like, I would just be
Mhm.
carrying one of the equipments. I
Yeah.
didn't and then I show up, and all of a sudden all the cameras are on me and all the lights are on me, and she's like, "This is your show, go ahead." And I was like,
Yeah.
you know, I had this like moment of terror, and then some voice just came into my head and said, "Breathe. It's not about you. It's not about ego. It's about spirit, and you are a messenger. So
Right.
let go of any self-consciousness that you have.
And
Go
just
with
be the conduit. Just be the
exactly.
conduit.
Just
Yeah.
and we had a great experience. I picked up a lot of stuff, and there were like things that were really surprisingly accurate, you know,
Mhm.
and it gave me a boost of confidence of like, oh my gosh, I can actually do this. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And you know, I have a list of places that I am dying to go to and investigate, and the farmhouse is one of them, and you know, the Winchester Mystery House is another.
Mhm.
But I love that feeling of walking through a home and just vibing it out and meeting the spirits there, good or bad, you
Yeah.
know? And so I had that experience, and then, you know, continued to work. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, now mind you, my entire life, ever since I was little, I have loved reading, and I have always wanted to publish a book. And I've written several, but I just never, none of them felt like the one, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I had this bizarre thing happened where, completely out of the blue, I did nothing to solicit this aside from just exist. A person contacted the store that I work at and wanted to talk to me and interview me about doing a book on mediumship, on talking to spirits. And I was like, yes, yes, I will. Let's do it. So I sat down with them, had a great interview, banged the book out in a couple of months. I mean, I wrote that sucker so fast. It was like a lifetime of stuff just pouring out of me.
Poured out. Yep.
So much stuff came out that they cut about half of it just for space, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it was going to be published by Callisto Publishing. And then there was a shakeup in the publishing world and the tech world, and everything went down. And so my book was shelved. I fell into a deep depression. And I heard a friend of mine who passed away many years ago, and I loved her. Her name was Amy Wallace. And she wrote a book called The Sorcerer's Apprentice about Carlos Castaneda and her time with him. So she was also very woo-woo. And she talks to me a lot. Mm-hmm. And she showed up and she said, everything happens for a reason, Melissa.
Everything.
The time was not right for the book to come out. We've got to wait a little while. Mm-hmm. She said, it's going to come out next year in the spring. And she said, it's going to come out in association with Simon & Schuster. And I was like, what? Because that was her publisher. Mm-hmm. And I was like, it's sometimes you get the messages and you're like,
yeah, mm-hmm.
Really? So I wrote it down. It's in I have a record of having it written down and the timestamp on it. And I put it away and I'm like, I'm not going to think about this. I'll just, thank you, Amy. And I'll, just keep living. And I ended up doing a web series for Ken and George and, just other things to keep myself busy. And all because I was approaching 50. And my thing was like I have to do something before I hit 50. Something has to happen.
I know, something has got to give. Yeah.
Right? Like it's getting, so I was like, okay, well, if it's not going to be the book, maybe it'll be the web series, or maybe it'll be, a podcast or a ghost hunting thing or something. I'm just going to do everything. I won't say no to anything. And I've done a whole bunch of stuff. And then in the midst of me saying yes to a bazillion things, mm-hmm. I get the email, and it's crazy. So Source Books, who is an imprint of Penguin Random House, mm-hmm. they're marketing the book. They bought it, but Simon & Schuster is distributing it. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's the Simon & Schuster connection. That's my friend Amy. She moved mountains from the other side. What did she do? And so now the book is coming out, and it's called 30 Real Signs from the Afterlife. And it's all about, I basically because I teach classes, I train people in mediumship, and I do mentorships and things. And so I kind of took all of my information, everything I've learned so far, and I'm sure I still have much, much more to learn, because that's the nature of life. But I took everything I know and I boiled it down to its in the simplest way, mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of books out there that are on the subject. It's almost too many books on the subject. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to have a slightly different approach and make it easy to read, easy to digest. It's a quick read. And I really poured my heart and soul into it. And so the first half is, how to set sacred space so you're protected, you're safe, mm-hmm. How to listen, how to receive, how to connect, how to ask questions, things like that. And then the last part of the book is, another part of the book is all signs. So I took every sign that I've ever experienced and threw in ones that other people I know have experienced. Did tons of research. You can see I have so many books now. I can't even fit them.
My God, this house looked like a library exploded in it. I was looking behind you, admiring your bookcase. Looks like my bookcase. Got all kinds of stones and rocks and crystals and stuff, stuff in front of all my favorite books. And it always looks like I just pulled 45 of them out to just hold them, revisit them, and then threw them back in. Yeah. Okay. My life is chaos. I'm just saying.
Exactly. That's what I say. I'm like, I am chaos, but I find power in chaos.
I find power in chaos. Yes.
But yeah, so now sadly I don't have like a hardcover or a copy of the book yet. I'm still waiting on Simon and Schuster to send that to me.
Mhm.
But so the all there's all the different signs, you know, and I talk about like what it means, like what it could potentially mean if you see, you know, you think of a loved one and you see a hummingbird or what have you. And I also make sure to say, but it could also mean something entirely different. That's the beauty of signs and learning your spirit language,
Mhm.
because you know you can start. I give a launch pad, so this is what it could mean. But then there's at the back of it, I have tracking pages so that you can write your own, because you might have an experience with a spirit and have a sign, and it might mean something entirely different than what I've written, because each individual has their own unique spirit connection and language. And my job is just to help facilitate that and help you open up to it.
Mhm.
So
Marvelous. Don't you feel remarkably fulfilled now?
it's unbelievable. I feel like I have finally, you know, my whole life people have said to me, step into your power. And I
Mhm.
never knew what that meant.
Mhm.
I mean, I knew on a theoretical, logical, rational level, but not
Yeah.
embodied. And
Yeah.
now I'm like, is this what it is? Is
Well,
this
you're
what it
living into your own destiny.
Yes.
You're living into what you were born to do.
Yes.
And wouldn't it be delightful if all of us just were born knowing, you know, and we didn't have to go through all these steps and all this gobbledygook that we call life,
Yeah.
that's just riddled with so many different experiences that just processing it takes decades. You know, but we have to grow into our awareness of self and you know, come to reconcile with who we are, why we're here, where we come from, and where we're going.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like, you know, I feel like for me, I feel like my purpose now is to activate others, if that makes
Mm,
sense. I feel like um I feel like we are in its I love that your show is a world awakening, because that's how I feel. I feel like we
mhm.
are in this midst of a spiritual awakening. And then of course
We
we have
are.
the age of Aquarius is
Yeah,
here. It's going to
it's here.
and that's part of it. And I feel like people are being sort of pinged, like it's time to wake up and now it's time to
Mhm,
wake you up and
mhm.
things like that. And so I've been taking on, for the first time in my life, I'm taking on mentees. And every single one of them, as soon as I start talking to them, I'm like, I'll say to them, like, what do you want out of this? What is your goal? What do you hope that I can do for you? And if they say, my hope is to serve others, and I have these abilities and I don't know how to control them and I want to use them to help others, I'm like, you're in the right spot,
Yeah.
because I have been through the ringer and I can help you get there, you know?
Well, and yeah, and that's the only right answer. That's the only right answer. Because
Yes.
otherwise, you're just, all right, there's this odd thing where people are at once fascinated by and fearful of witchcraft.
Yes. Yes.
Witchcraft is harnessing and manipulating the energy, that not only the energy that we are, but the energy around us, and using it like uh, to paint a palette or to, you know, sculpt a piece of clay. It's just taking and harnessing that energy and directing it. That's all that it is.
Yes.
And there are countless millions and millions and millions of people who would technically be, should they care to wear the label, a witch. Um, but actually, that is an earth goddess. That
Yes.
is, you know, or a god or a goddess. It's channeling that divine energy. It's um, actually the simplest, most beautiful thing that we can do. And the way to connect with it is to go to nature. to go out into
Yes.
nature and to see divine mind in action. Just
Yes.
with a cascading wind through the leaves of a wild oak,
Mhm.
or just to feel the grass beneath your feet and know that there is life actually below the surface, and stop for a moment and you can actually feel the worms. You can actually feel what's going on underground. Or, like you said, place your head on a rock. When I take you to the farm, and we will go, and we got to get, Susan's been there. She already knows. She totally gets this. But you can actually lay on the stones that create what the 6-acre backyard. And you can feel the river that's running underground, about 800 feet underground is the Lost River of New Hampshire, that was
Wow.
buried during the last ice age. And it goes directly under the farm.
Wow, I'm getting
And
chills.
feel it. So we'll do that. We will
Uh,
do that. But you are living into your destiny. You are doing precisely, and you got there earlier than most. So be grateful for that. Be grateful that that trial by fire and the walking on the hot coals was not for nothing.
yes.
It all happened precisely the way that it should, precisely when it should, and how it should, or it would have happened a different way.
Exactly. Yes, thank you for that. That's so true.
It is. It's oh my God, we just blew through an hour like it was nothing. We have about 5 minutes left.
Are you
Um,
kidding? Wow.
I know it's shocking. But that's okay, because we'll do this over and over again. And landing with Dead Air Full Spectrum with Ken and George is a really good place for you to be.
Yes,
I know I'm on the network too. And they're just great people,
they
and
are.
couldn't be more different than they are. Couldn't possibly be. They are like polar opposites. But that's a good. And earlier, I usually have a pen and a notepad with me, but I remembered. I made sure to remember when you were saying I hit that wall and I suddenly said yes to everything. And yep, see, Bill's like, you got 5 minutes left. He's
Uh,
so mean. He's got an atomic clock. I can't question it because
right.
I gave it to him. This is time, time. It's an illusion. I keep trying it. Oh,
It is. I always lose track of time because
I
it's not
know,
real.
because it's not real. Although there are some scientists who are pretty sure it's its own dimension.
Yeah.
So, who knows? We don't know. But you said yes to the universe. You said yes at every turn, at
Yes.
every corner. Your grandmother is absolutely with you.
Mm.
Absolutely with you. Is so proud of you. And the message that I got while you were talking was that she would have done what you're doing now if she had had the courage.
Oh, I'm gonna cry. Yeah,
It was a different time
it was.
and
Oh,
a very taboo subject.
yes, it was
It's
a very
not
different time.
anymore, but her gifts were passed to you. And it's not unusual for that kind of proclivity to skip a generation. It's not unusual. Doesn't mean that your mother doesn't have any of that intuitive spiritual connection. Of course she does, or she wouldn't have been able to produce you in this incarnation.
Right.
Also, before we go, I need to explain something to you.
Yes.
You are a contactee. And what happened to you on those rocks was not smoking a joint of the good stuff. And it was not, the tide coming in. You asked and received the communication that you needed, that was pivotal. That what happened to you happened to me when I was 13. And it was my personal paradigm shift. It changed everything. And so the next time that I have you on the show, we're going to focus on you being a contactee and how that changed your life and altered your, not only your perspective, but your trajectory.
Yes.
So that's what we will focus on. And if you possibly can, I would love for you to attend UFO Contact in Houghton Lake, Michigan next September. So I'll be in touch with you and put you in touch with Deb DeRoos. It's her, she and her husband RJ put this remarkable event together, and something's telling me that you need to be there this year.
Oh, I'll be there then.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Excellent. Well, we are officially. Bill, how much time do we have left? Get the atomic clock out. Just tell me in his little. There he is. See, okay. And there's another weirdo who you had the opportunity to meet before the show went live. And look what he's got hanging behind him.
Yeah. I love it.
I'm not commenting because that was just a Home Depot gimmick. But I have seen the little ones, and I've seen a dark one that wasn't too friendly. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Maybe not too friendly to you. You know, it's probably because of that New York attitude you got going all the time.
Listen.
All the time.
Something crawling on top of me from the feet down to my chest, and it's on me on my bed. It's not exactly a good experience for me.
And it was, you know, I didn't think it was that kind of show that we would be talking about.
What a way to end the show. I'm getting trouble now, everybody. Anyway, have a great weekend, everybody. I'll be out so you can wrap up.
Okay.
Have a great night to both of you and everyone that's watching. Have a great weekend.
You too, honey. He's so great. Oh
He's
my
awesome.
God. Oh my God. So, how I end the show every week is to remind everyone who's eavesdropping on our lovely personal conversation. Didn't I tell you?
Yes.
Nice cushy place in cyberspace.
Perfect.
You know, we live in a very troubled world and we have to work together to heal the world of its woes. So I encourage everyone that's watching A World Awakening tonight to spend a few minutes projecting how you want the world to be, because thoughts are things, and put it out and take a few moments to imagine what kind of world we could be living in, and we will make it so. And I ask you to be the change that you seek and to be the light that you seek. And with that, Melissa, I'll call you this weekend.
Yes.
Love you. We're over and out. And happy evening to all with great love in our hearts.